Hello, welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health here on YouTube. I'm your host, Todd Rennebaum. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you like this video. Please like and subscribe and do all that stuff. This week's episode, I'm speaking with David Granier, and he is a stand-up comedian and also a therapist. And he has an organization. It's called Stand-Up Comedy, and he takes people with mental health issues and mental illnesses. They create a stand-up comedy routine, and then they go out and perform it. And I'll let him talk all about it. It's amazing, and he can come to your city and do it, and he does it online, virtually and stuff. And well, just watch. Without further ado, I give you David. What was first? What came first, the comedy or the mental health issues?
Definitely the mental health issues. So the mental health issues began when I was about 16 or 17. And I have bipolar, but it originally manifested as depression. So it began, I don't know, I was 16, 17. I attempted suicide. I ended up in a psych ward. And I was not diagnosed at that point. So I went around with untreated, undiagnosed depression for about 20 years.
Undiagnosed bipolar.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I refer to it as depression because that's the way it was. But yeah, I would say it was undiagnosed, untreated depression. I mean, I think, it's probably bipolar too. The one that you get a lot of lows, but not a lot of highs. The highs were pretty minimal. So yeah, I was undiagnosed, and I went around depressed for almost 20 years, not even understanding that I was depressed. I just thought it was normal. For everyone to feel like shit. And I thought, so I guess no one wants to get out of bed in the morning, and this is just the way it is. And once I started to get on meds, and I always preface this, I've had lots of therapy and done lots of things, so it's not like I'm saying, get on meds and everything will be fine. And I'm also not here to push meds on anyone. But they worked for me. And all of a sudden I started to feel better. And I used to be a class clown. And, I started to feel better. I thought, something, I think I want to try stand-up comedy. So I signed myself up for an amateur night. And it was like this club that sat like 200 people. There were maybe 25 people in that club that night. So it was like a big empty cavern. And I went up there. I got 5 minutes of dead silence, nothing. I mean, even a negative response would have been better than nothing.
Like 5 minutes, right? Some feedback here, people.
Yeah,
anything.
Just throw something or tell me I suck or something like that. But there was nothing. And I thought, okay, that's it. I'm never doing stand-up again. Forget it. But then I took a course. And the next time I was up, I was prepared. The club was packed with all our friends and supporters. And it was an amazing experience. And I just knew I have to do stand-up. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I have to do it. And then around this time, too, I was getting my training as a counselor. Because that's the other thing I do. I'm a counselor and a stand-up comic with bipolar. And so I was getting my training as a counselor, and I got asked to teach this stand-up comedy course at a local community college called Granier College. It was a night course, has nothing to do with mental health. I still teach it today. And but I would see people who had they would have a life-changing experience doing stand-up. And I thought this would be awesome to package up so people who wanted to do comedy could also get the life-changing experience. And that's what gave me the idea for Stand Up for Mental Health. And it's been 20 years, started in 2004. So this is the 20th year anniversary. So that's sort of it in a nutshell.
Well, I'm kind of envious of you. So I have a similar kind of situation with my mental health. It was undiagnosed and whatnot, and I went to substance abuse as well. But I was always the class clown, and I was always told. So I'm 46 years old, so like over 30 years now, people have like, you should try stand up. And it's like, yeah, in Indian Head, Saskatchewan, I would love to do it. but it's a whole other thing being the silly class clown guy and actually doing stand-up. And it sounds like that's what you learned your first time on stage.
I learned it the hard way. And you're right. it's one thing to make your friends laugh and just to be silly. It's another thing to actually make people laugh, like purposefully, and go out, and because I have people who come into my class occasionally and go, oh, I'm really funny, and then they try and actually be funny in front of people who aren't there. They're like, oh, okay, so this doesn't happen that way. And they realize, I mean, it's a lot of work to do stand up. There's a lot of preparation, and there's a lot of work, and there's a lot of, when I in my class, I say, I expect a lot of failure, because sometimes you have to rewrite a joke like 10 or 15 times before it works. So you have to be prepared for a lot of failure as a stand up comic.
Hmm. Sounds like sounds like life.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like
Yeah.
the opposite of a Tony Robbins commercial. It's like you're going to suck a lot of the time.
I've talked to a few comedians on the podcast, and it's always amazing because I watch a lot of stand up comedy, and it's amazing how many stand up comedians talk about mental health or addictions or
Much
whatever. It's
more so than before.
like is there some kind of connection like
Ah,
between creative, funny people and mental illness? You think?
I don't know. I know there was some sort of study done in England, and I forget what it came up with, and I think it might have said that uh, comics, they're like a higher percentage of people with depression or mental health issues. But I
Hmm.
also think that it's something whose time has come, and I think there's a lot more comics who, because I know comics who told me, like, did you ever hear of Mike McDonald? He was a really well,
Hmm.
yeah. So he was being really supportive of stand up for mental health, and he was a friend. He passed away since, but I remember he said he was afraid at first to come out as having bipolar, because he was afraid it would ruin his career. And so he didn't come out with bipolar for a lot of years. Um, but it's something whose time has come. It's almost, I joke, it's kind of mandatory. If you don't have mental health problems, you can't do a comedy act anymore.
Well, that was one of my jokes with my friends because I've spent time in the psych ward too, and it's like, they all my friends go to like, you know, Mexico and
Yeah,
things, and I went to an all inclusive
yeah,
as well, but it was in the psych ward, and it's like, oh, you've never been,
yeah. That's
it's
right.
like, well, you don't have a leg to stand on then if you don't have some kind of issues.
Yeah, like, why would you pay for an all inclusive when you can get it for free?
So that's amazing that you've actually, well, you have life experience with
Absolutely.
mental illness and health, and then you wanted to help people, so you became a counselor, and then you wanted to also throw in the comedy, and then so you're like the total package.
Well, it wasn't a plan. It was like, I remember when I first started in 2004. I thought, well, I'll try this. I don't know. I don't really have a plan. Maybe I'll get a 3 month class out of it. I don't, and it just spread. And in 2005, CBC shot a documentary on it. It's a great documentary called "Cracking Up," and they did a wonderful
Hmm.
job. It was just so powerful and funny and hopeful, and that opened a lot of doors. Um, and since then, I've run stand up for mental health in over 50 cities in Canada, the US, and Australia, in partnership with mental health organizations in those cities. So, in those cases, I train the comics virtually. And then at the end of 6 or 12 weeks, I fly in and we do a public awareness raising show, like at a club or the theater or something like that. So it's really caught on. And it was that documentary that really put us on the map.
Hmm. What do the courses cost if you're someone that's been struggling
Yeah.
and you want to do this?
Yeah. First of all, in all the other cities that I do it, it's free, because the mental health organization that I'm working with always funds it. And I think that's
Hmm.
really important, because there are a lot of people who want to take the class who are on disability, and they just can't afford anything. I mean, to them, it's like paying for food is, pretty much what they can do. So, like I say, in all those cities, it's free. In Vancouver, so we have a nonprofit society that functions in the Vancouver area, just in the Vancouver area. And what I tell people when they take the class, I say, so it's a 6-month course here in Vancouver. And what I tell people, if you were taking this class outside of Stand Up for Mental Health, you could easily pay $1,500, but we cap it at $250, and we slide down from there. So we never turn anyone away for financial reasons. I mean, we'll go as low as $5 for the 6 months. And I always trust people. I never ask questions. If someone says I can afford $25, it's like, great. I don't say, well, I need to see your bank statements and your rent receipts and all that kind of crap. It's just like, okay, that's what you can afford. That's what you can afford. I'm not gonna, there's no questions asked. So basically, we don't exclude anyone. And I think, once again, that's really important, because I think it's just morally wrong to have a class like this and have half the people who want to take it not be able to take it because they can't afford it.
Like any other mental health service, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, I should reach out to some places here in Saskatchewan and get you hooked up here. I think that'd be amazing.
Please, yes, please do.
Have you had anybody from your classes then become a professional?
Well, there's been a few from Stand Up for Mental Health, and for my Langara college course, there's been a bunch of people who are now, national headliners who got their start in
Hmm.
class. A bunch of people who, they've gone on to have, do Just for Laughs. And I think one of them had a Netflix special, and they've far surpassed me in terms of in terms of their comedy. Um, yeah, so there have been some really, there's like just great comedians.
So the student becomes the master.
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, I've had, because, in order to become like a pro on that circuit. So, I mean, I do kind of a mental health circuit. So I do
Right.
a lot of gigs, not just with Stand Up for Mental Health comics, but I do gigs at conferences and stuff like that where they bring me in. Like, I was just in Tennessee doing a gig, but on my own, doing my own show. So I do
Hmm.
that. But in terms of becoming a club comic, it's really a process of attrition, because you have to be willing to go to open mics like 5 or 6 nights a week. And also, for me, I mean, I'm not young anymore, and most comics are in their early 20s. Um, and so it's a milieu that I just don't fit into, and I don't have the desire to go out and do, I mean, that takes a lot of, I don't know. I joke, comics are really needy, and you have to be really needy to try and get in front of people at an open mic. And a lot of open mics are really crappy, where you're playing to, 10 people, and they're all comics. And comics are a terrible audience because, first of all, we don't laugh, we analyze. So someone will make a joke and will go, yeah, man, that was really funny. But there's silence. Or comics are like, you're on, and they're busy, they got their notebooks and they're busy writing out their set, and so they're not really listening to you. So comics can be a really tough audience, and a lot of open mics are like that. And it can be kind of soul destroying. Um, so for me, it's just not what I want to do, and it hasn't been.
Hmm. So are you still do the counseling though, full time or
No,
most of the time?
stand up for mental health is my full-time gig.
Oh.
Like, I think I'm seeing 2.5 clients right now. Um,
Oh.
so no, I don't. I sort of do. I mean, I still like counseling, and I do it. I still do it just to stay honest. Just so I'm still in touch with the serious side. But in terms of having a regular practice, I haven't had a regular practice. Oh God, I don't know, for 20 years now.
So as soon as you started
Pretty
the stand
much.
up for comedy.
Yeah, like I say, I think, the probably when I was doing stand up for mental health at the beginning, I don't know, I probably had maybe 4 or 5 clients. But yeah, so like I say, it hasn't been a regular part of my life for a long time.
But I suppose you probably there's some therapy involved in your stand up for comedy class, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not their therapist, but
Right.
I am there to be a support and to help them work through. Some people get triggered by stuff that happens in class, and so I'm there, like outside of class, if they need to talk about it. So, like I say, I'm not there to do therapy, so I'm not there going, okay, so let's look at this trigger and how does it relate to your childhood or whatever it is.
Hmm.
I'm not there to do that, but I am going, there to go, okay, so, you've been triggered. Let's look at how you can work through that and what you need to do to get beyond that so you can stay in the class.
So are you getting people that are like even like homeless at times, or
Um, Not necessarily homeless
no?
because you need to be able to. I mean, I think it's really hard when you're homeless to have a schedule and to get places and to because
Yeah,
sometimes
that's
we
true.
we have to do the odd class on Zoom because I'm out of town or something like that. And so you need to have, access to a computer and somewhere to use the computer. So no, we haven't been able to really expand to that population. Certainly we've had people in the class who have been homeless.
Right.
Some
Okay.
of them talk about their experiences in their acts, which I think is great. But yeah, we're not really set up at this point to serve people who are homeless. And just to give you an example, I mean, the organization here in Vancouver, we have one staff member, and that's me. So we have a board of directors, but it's like there's no one to delegate stuff to other than myself. Um, because like I say, we're a really small organization with a really small budget, and I'm really proud because our budget, pretty much all of it, goes into program delivery. There's no office rental or whatever it is. I mean, we rent a church basement to give our classes in, and that's kind of the one of the major expenses, and they give us a great deal, so I'm not complaining. But yeah, we're a small organization.
Hmm. And do you find people in the classes they then begin to bond and connect and because I mean that's a lot of well they say even Gabo or Mate or whatever his name is
Yeah,
says connection is the opposite of addiction,
yeah,
and so you get people with the like-minded,
yeah,
maybe not like-minded but
hmm,
similar struggles, and
yeah,
then yeah they go through this because I mean it would be grueling for some people to go through this class and come out of their shell, so then it feels like a little bit of team
definitely.
building.
Yeah, it's always a really good group, and yeah, they usually really gel and come out of the group with some friendships. So that's really cool, and it's what I tell them. It's once again, it's not meant as a therapy group, but it's therapeutic, and it's not necessarily a support group, but it's supportive. And so I think people get a lot out of. And the other thing too is, I have people come in and say, listen, I've tried lots of therapy, I've tried group therapy, and it just isn't for me. But this is something that really works. And I think, one of the things is too, so we always do a check-in at the beginning of each class. And, people say, well, I had a great week or I had a terrible week or whatever it is. And if it was a support group or a therapy group, I would say, well, let's talk more about your terrible week. But in stand up for mental health, it's like, great, let's turn that terrible week into some stand up comedy. And so I mean, I say it's like therapy because in therapy, when I'm doing therapy with someone, I will sometimes say, they'll talk about something from the past that was painful, and I'll say, what do you wish you'd done or said back then to give them a sense of putting their own ending on their story and changing their stance from being a victim to a victor. Because, it's like you're saying, it didn't get me. I made it through, and I can still joke about it. And it's the same in stand up for mental health. We take that stuff, we turn it into comedy where people get to say or do what they wish they'd done or said back then. Because I think a lot of problems people have is they were involved in situations and they didn't have a voice, whether it was within the system or within their families or whatever it is. And I tell them, you can't change the past, but you can get the last laugh. And there's a lot of therapy in that. And so here we have, a group of people and they're getting the last laugh. And that's really powerful.
Yeah, it would be empowering. It's like when um, minority groups take a word back and they use it themselves, and
Totally.
it's like, yeah, that's
I think that's a brilliant analogy, because now it's, and it's like, I think in the mental health community, and certainly in my class, we've taken the word crazy and we've taken it back. You know,
mm-hmm.
you can't say it, but I've had lived experience. I can say it. I can refer to myself as crazy, and so I think that's really cool that, we've reclaimed that word that's been so hurtful to a lot of people.
Man, this sounds amazing. Like it takes little bits of so many cool things and
Mhm.
just brings it all together in one. It's a bit like art therapy, but even more so because it is a group thing in a way too. So
Yeah.
that's really cool.
And the
Um,
other thing is that there's a performance aspect to it. So we're not just doing our
right.
therapy and, putting our vision board on the wall. It's like, no, no, we're moving to a performance, and it's got to be good quality, because the last thing I want is for people to come to our shows and feel sorry for us and go, oh,
Right.
something that really sucked. But, they do have mental health problems, and what else can you expect? So I'm kind
Right. Yeah.
I'm the filter that goes, yes, that's a good bit. Or, something, I think that bit needs some more work. And plus, we try everything out in class. So by the time they get to the show, they have an act and we know it's going to work. Because I don't take any chances. So, we rehearse in class with the PA. So they're prepared, they're ready to go. And so, yeah, we always have good shows. And in all the years I've been doing this, and I've probably trained, I don't know, close to 1,000 comics. We have never, actually, the only time I had someone bomb, and this was in my Langara class, not in Stand Up for Mental Health. What I tell people is, okay, you've got your set, and what happens is that as you get closer to the show, your set, like you've rehearsed it so many times, it doesn't seem funny. But it's almost like you got to take a leap of faith. And there was one guy who decided he would write an entirely new 5 minutes that he had never tried.
Oh.
And I tell people, don't do that, and it did not end well. And I sort of went, well, something. There was really nothing I could do about that, and that's not on me. That's on him. But other than that, never had anyone bomb. Never had anyone, cry and rush off the stage or anything like that. It's like, I think when you're really prepared, and that's the secret of comedy, then you're ready to do all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. Like it gets workshopped and everything, and
Mm,
I watched that the video you sent me. It was I like I don't know how you got hooked up to Australia, but it was an Australian
yeah,
little
yeah,
documentary, I guess,
yeah,
10-minute documentary,
yeah,
and yeah, and you even prepare them for like, okay, so when you're up there, you're not going to even see the crowd. There's
yeah.
lights and things. Like you really prepare people so that it's a professional looking show, which is I think everyone would appreciate. It's not just the audience.
Totally. And I think it really means, what I tell the comics is, once you've done stand up, you can do anything. You can get a job, you can go back to school. It's like stand up comedy, it's the hardest thing in the world. And if you've just made, 150 people laugh, yeah, that's a pretty amazing accomplishment. And usually people succeed, beyond their wildest dreams, because a lot of people come into the class and they're convinced they're going to fail. They're like, oh, this will never, I want to try it, but it's not going to work for me. I'll be that one person that bombs, that, even though he's never had a bomb, I'll be that first person. And no, it doesn't happen. And so they come out of the class and they've got something, of course they get a video of their performance. And I tell them, when you're having a bad day, watch that video and look at what you were able to accomplish.
Yeah, it's funny how quickly we can forget our our accomplishments and
Yeah.
our the struggles we did make it through
Yeah.
when you are in the depths.
Yep.
Because quite often, like I've gone through addiction treatment and I've been through a whole bunch of stuff, and sometimes I'm like, I can't, even go downtown to get groceries because I got such bad anxiety, and there's like, wait a minute, but I did these other
Yeah.
extremely tough things. I can do this, and then yeah, it kind of sets you up again. So yeah, they say don't look in the past, but sometimes it's you got to.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, we all have a past, and it's not like we can just sort of go, oh, I'm over that stuff. I'm never gonna. I mean, we're all constantly revisiting the past, and I think it's just, um, once again, when you've gotten the last laugh, I think the past can be a little less painful.
Mm-hmm.
And what I tell people is, so in mental health, we have that, we look for strength based, which is great. But when you're seeing a psychiatrist and a psychologist and a case manager and occupational therapist and an art therapist, and you're going, so it's really easy to feel like there's something wrong with you. And what I say is,
Mm.
when you come to my class, there's something right with you. And I think that's a whole different way of looking at things.
Hmm. You should combine psychedelic therapy with this class.
Well, actually, I premier researcher in the use of psychedelics, having conducted numerous trials with me as the primary test subject
Oh.
in my late teens and early 20s. And I mean, like I said, I did a lot of LSD, and LSD is amazing stuff. I mean, to me, it was like this spiritual experience. I mean, I wouldn't do any at this point because it's just so hard on your body. But I think that psychedelics and therapy, I can see why it's becoming so well studied, and so much, how it's why it's spreading.
Hmm. Yeah, I've talked to a couple of people about psychedelics, and um, I've also had lots of emails from people that claim they're shamans and all these
Right.
things, and it's like, no, I'm not. No, it's like I don't encourage you to go out in the woods and do a bunch of shrooms
Yeah.
to cure yourself of anything, but
Yeah.
it's like any other medicine or substance. It's nice to have a professional help you through it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I know that for a lot of like the therapy that's set up. I mean, they have two therapists with you the whole time, and I guess your trip. I don't know how long the trip lasts, but it's like, I don't know. Oh, I think they actually have in one place. It's like you do 3 12-hour sessions. Um, you know, when you're high. I know. I'm not supposed to say hi. Like that's not the. I'm sure there's another word for it when, because I mean, personally, I mean, you're talking to someone. Um, I mean, I've never done psychedelic therapy, but and I know I'm not supposed, but I loved getting high. Getting high was awesome. I mean, the concepts
Me too.
weren't all that great, but the whole. I mean, I just loved getting high, and I just actually. Um, for this condition I had what's called a ketamine infusion.
Mm.
Got me high, and it didn't do anything for me. It didn't help. But I got to spend an afternoon, cruising at like 50,000 feet. And it was like, whoa, this stuff is awesome. I forgot how good it is. I totally get why people do this. It's just like a reminder.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the one place I talked to, I think they do get you pretty well. They get you pretty high for
Yeah,
4 or 5 hours at a time,
yeah,
and then you go through a therapy session.
exactly.
So then your mind's open to talking about this stuff. I also have friends that have done ketamine treatment where it's very clinical. You go in, you spend your hour doing your thing just by yourself,
Yeah,
and then off you go again. So yeah, it is interesting that people are doing more research and more things with it. But again, don't just go out in the woods and get high and
yeah,
hope that you're not depressed anymore.
yeah. Probably not a good idea.
I mean, I I mean, if you're okay
Yeah,
getting high, you can go get high. But if you're having mental health and mental illness problems, don't go out and get high on your own.
yeah, probably not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Anyway, because I'm not anti-drugs, I'm just
yeah,
you know do it carefully.
yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, no, you're
I might have to edit some of this.
going to get in trouble.
So, I suppose, do you see people with like all types of mental illnesses, or do you have like a checklist of people? Like,
Everything. We get everything. bipolar, schizophrenia, PTSD, OCD, BPD, all the acronyms. We get everyone. And what I've realized, because I've sometimes I've looked at people who want to be in the class, and I thought, I don't think this person will succeed, and but I've let them in because we're all about giving people a chance. And what I've realized is
Hmm.
that when you give someone with a mental health condition something they really want to do, they will do whatever it takes to make that thing happen. For example, one of our comics um, had treatment resistant depression, and took the class in her late 60s. And she had been in and out of hospital with suicide attempts all her life. And she attempted suicide about a week before the show. And she was hospitalized. And she told me later, normally when she's hospitalized, she does nothing. Like she just lies there. She refuses to participate. But here she is. She's attempted suicide. She's practicing her act on the staff and patients. She's selling them tickets to the show, and she did the show. She got a day pass. She killed it. She felt so happy and so good. She didn't need to go back to the hospital. Now, I'm not saying she never did, but
Hmm.
in this case, she didn't. And so, once again, I look at that and I go, wow, that just basically says never give up on anyone. Because, this is a sort of person I'm sure lots of people had given up on them over the years. And
Hmm.
yeah, never,
So it must be like that sense of accomplishment,
yeah.
that sense of purpose, that dopamine hit, all that stuff.
Totally. And I think the thing too is she had a reason to get out of the hospital. She had a reason, as opposed to, I think, a lot of people when they're hospitalized, it's just like they're hospitalized and they want to get out, obviously, but they don't have
Hmm.
this burning, yeah, I've got a show to do in 4 days. Um, and I think what stand up for mental health gives people a lot of time, it gives them meaning in their life, because I think a lot of times when you're going through stuff, you lose that sense of meaning, and I think it's really hard to progress and hard to live when there's no meaning in your life.
Absolutely, yeah, and that sense of validation too, and
Yeah.
then yeah, all that stuff. Um, do you ask people about their mental illness or their mental conditions, or do they just come to the class and they talk about it when they feel like talking about it? Like, you don't have like, you know, we need some ID. Are you really crazy?
Well, I remember I had one guy say, "Do I need a psychiatrist letter to be in your class?" And I'm like, "Man, if you want to fake a mental health disorder badly enough to be in this class, you belong here." So I do intake interviews with people.
Oh, okay.
And and we talk, they'll tell me in the interview, I'll say, so tell me a bit about yourself. And they'll tell me, I've been through this and I've been through that. um, but there's no pressure, like when they're in the class, there's no pressure to disclose if they don't want to. There's no pressure, like I'm never going to say to someone, well, you have schizophrenia, let's talk about that time that blah blah blah. It's up to them. I mean, often people really go for it, but there are people who I know have had other things happen, and they just don't want to go for it. And what I tell people is, I will never force you to go somewhere where you don't want to go, and I'll also never force you, because we do a lot of brainstorming, and sometimes we come up with a joke for someone and we think, oh, what a brilliant joke, and they kind of go, yeah, it's funny, but it's not for me. And I tell them, I will never force you to do a joke that you don't want to do, because you've got to sell it. And if it's not
Hmm.
you, I mean, the audience knows. The audience knows if you're just trying to do material that doesn't really, yeah, that isn't you.
Right, right. They can sense the sincerity behind
Yeah.
yeah. Um, oh, are there some people that they don't talk about their mental illness at all in their set? Like they just come up with comedy and it has nothing to do with their struggles, or is it almost always?
The one of the ground rules is that 60% of your act needs to be about your mental health issues.
Oh, interesting.
40% can be about whatever, your cat or whatever. But yeah, 60%, because that's why people are coming to see our shows. They want to hear about people's mental health stories. And if we had people who are just doing comedy about, cats or, whatever, it just defeats the whole purpose of it. So yeah, we're really clear that we want you to. I mean, once again, I'm not pushing people to talk about anything specific, but
Hmm.
that needs to be your mental health story.
Do you find some people do crowd work, or do you kind of suggest maybe don't do crowd work, stick with the script?
Well, they're short sets. They're like 4 minute sets, and
Gotcha.
not
Okay.
a lot of time to do crowd work. Although, sometimes they do, small bits of crowd work. And what I tell them about crowd work is like some of the comics who are really good, and there are comics out there who are just amazing at crowd work. They just blow me away. But for where they're at, I say, so if you're going to do some crowd work and you're going to ask the crowd a question, you need to know what answer you're going to get back, and you need to be prepared for that, and you need to be able to segue into your next bit. Um, so don't just go into the crowd and ask a question that you have no idea what answer you're going to get and end up somewhere where, you're basically having to dig yourself out of a hole. So there's,
Yeah.
because yeah, I mean, like I say, there are comics, and I enjoy doing some crowd work. But like I say, I always try and make sure that I have a sense of where I'm going, and I just don't just sort of throw myself on the crowd and hope for the best kind of thing. Although I know some
Yeah.
comics who, like I say, they're just amazing, and
Hmm.
and once again, I think they kind of know where they're going with their crowd work, but they're just incredibly quick and creative. Um, and yeah, and they're great at it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you're not good at it, you can get away from you real quick.
Yeah, especially if you're a new comic.
Mm,
So yeah. So basically, the kind of crowd work they'll do is, let's say they're talking about, I don't know, being in a relationship. So they'll ask, by applause, who here is in a relationship? And they might say to someone, so how long you been in a relationship? Oh, that's great.
right,
Been married for 25 years. Well, I'm in a relationship, and then they go right into their material.
right. They don't start razzing and teasing
Yeah.
people and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
that can get away from you. Uh, this is called that Some Bunny special,
Okay.
and it's a segment where we chat about who cooperated in your mental health journey and filled or helped fill your emotional tank. And it's brought to you by Co-op. Do you have co-ops out in Vancouver?
You mean like co-op
Gas stations and
co-op radio? Is that what you're talking about? Or, yeah, I'm not too sure what you're referring to.
there's a thing called co-op, and it's like gas stations and food
Uh,
stores and hardware stores and stuff. But I
okay,
don't know,
no, I
maybe.
don't think we have that here in BC, at least not that I know of.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, well, they're sponsoring it anyway.
Right.
Um, so, is there anybody that has kind of been with you through your journey that you want to kind of give a shout out to?
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to my current psychiatrist. I think I've been seeing her for, I don't know, close to 10 years. And she's
Hmm.
amazing. She's always available, and she's very proactive when it comes to medication. Because I have, um, unfortunately for me, I'm on a cocktail, and unfortunately for me, um, over the years, meds have just stopped working all of a sudden. It's like,
Hmm.
I remember the first med I was on. It was great for 10 years, and then all of a sudden, bam! It just stopped working. And so she's very proactive. Like she goes, okay, this isn't working. Let's try this. Let's try this. Because a lot of psychiatrists will say, well, I'll put you on this med and we'll see, you got to wait 4 to 6 weeks. And she's like, no, it's not working. Let's do something now. And so she's gotten me out of a lot of black places. So her name's Dr. Reddy. And I just want to say, thanks, Dr. Reddy. You've been awesome. And yeah, that's who I would like to give a shout out to.
Nice, good one. Yeah, um, yeah. There's been a few people uh, give a shout out to their therapist or their counselor or
Yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah.
that's good. So is it difficult for you going through your own journeys, because it's not like you're cured?
No.
You still have your own journey,
Yeah.
um, and trying to be present for your clients and your students.
No, that's fortunately something I've always been able to do. And I mean, I'm really lucky. First of all, I've been stable for quite a while, so that's been great. And when I'm stable, I don't even think about being depressed or having a manic episode. Um, but I've always been really good at being there for people. And I'm one of the lucky ones where even when I'm having in a bad place, I can still run classes or see clients or get on planes and do gigs in other cities. So I'm really lucky. I have, and I really do attribute it to luck, because I know people who have conditions where they just can't do that. Like they'll hit a manic episode or they'll hit a depressive episode and they can't get out of bed. And, people say, well, what do wow, you must be a strong person and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I probably am, but I'm also lucky, um, for whatever reason. And so I just, always make it clear to people that, if you're in a place where you can't get out of bed, it's not your fault. And it's not that you're being lazy. And it's just like, so that's your condition right there. And that's how it manifests.
Hmm. And do you find some kind of therapy in teaching the group?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's great therapy for me because, um, first of all, it's something I love to do, and it gives my life meaning. And I think, sometimes in terms of therapy, I think if you have meaning in your life, um, sometimes I think that can do more than all the therapy in the world. So it gives you a reason. Like, I mean, you do this podcast. I'm guessing this podcast gives your life meaning. And once again, I'm thinking,
Nah. It does. Yes, it does.
yeah, I just do this because someone made me. Um, um, but yeah, so it gives my life meaning, and it's also, I find it really. I find doing comedy really therapeutic. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, comedy is the best high, making people laugh. It's free, it's legal, there's no side effects. I mean, what could be a better high? And I think that people chase a lot of highs when they're when they're addicted to substances, but this is a high that you chase. But like I say, it doesn't have the kind of negative consequences that that you can get if you're whatever doing whatever substance.
Hmm. There's no come down like meth.
No. And
As far as I know. I mean, I haven't done stand up comedy,
like
but
you can go to your friends, man, I did stand up comedy. That's amazing. If people go, that's amazing. You can't go to your friends and go, yeah, I did meth. And they're like, oh, yeah, incredible. Wow. You can, now that you've done meth, you can do anything.
you're freebasing comedy.
Yeah.
Well, I do quite a bit of like public speaking and
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
in schools and stuff.
Mm.
And, I am kind of a smartass in my talks too. But it's even that, even if it's a serious talk, I do get like I'm vibrating for a good 2 hours
I
afterwards still.
totally agree. I think just any kind of public speaking. And also it sounds like, you're not just public speaking on, that people should buy Kellogg's cornflakes or something like that. You're doing something really.
Not a sponsor.
Yeah. So yeah, I can see how give you a real buzz.
Especially, my favorite audiences are always like high school kids.
Yeah,
I don't know why, because I think I'm 46 years old and I'm still 17. I think maybe
yeah,
that's why I
yeah,
like
yeah.
it.
I can see that.
Yeah. Is there anything that you wanted to make sure people knew that I didn't ask you?
Well,
Or we
if people are interested, we're at standupformentalhealth.com, and there are about 150 videos on our site of comics that I've trained from here to Australia and back. So it's a great resource if you want some humor, some inspiration. And also, what I tell people is if you know someone that's going through a rough time, tell them, go see this website, take a look at these videos, look at what's possible. And these people have been through what you've been through, and look what they can do. And if they can do it, so can you. I mean, stand up isn't everyone's thing. So I'm not saying, go do stand up to everyone. But if people can do something amazing like that, I think, what I tell people is you can do something amazing too, whatever it is that is that amazing thing for you. So that's one of the things I like to tell people.
Hmm. Do you have TikTok? Are these videos anywhere else?
They're on YouTube. Obviously, we have a YouTube
Oh, okay.
get to just by going to the site and clicking on it. There are some videos. We put some videos up on TikTok. Um, and they're just short videos, like a minute,
Mm-hmm.
minute and a half. The ones on the site are mostly longer, like about 5 minutes or 7 minutes. But sometimes people just want a really quick hit. So yes, they're on TikTok, and I unfortunately I don't have the TikTok handle right now. But I
That's okay.
just go to TikTok and search "stand up for mental health." You'll find it.
Be sure to subscribe and to like this video. You can listen on Apple Podcast and Spotify. This is Todd Rennebaum saying, make your beds and take your meds. Keep watching for more interviews with incredible people telling their stories of resilience and adversity with mental health and mental illness.